At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your sites will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.
The 3 Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, Regina's only downtown brewery. Well, it's a big week in Riderville as we have some very important news that broke this morning as the Riders added a couple of receivers to their roster. Probably haven't really heard a whole lot of them, and we don't really know what they're going to be, if anything, but we do have a rooting interest now after the signing of American receiver K.D. Cannon.
Yes! I'm not even a Rider fan, and if he makes the roster, I want his jersey just to have Cannon on with whatever obscure number he's going to get, like, I don't know, 93.
Well, it's a defensive line number, so it's probably not that number, but yeah,
that's the joke.
Okay, whatever. I'm not in a joking mood, I guess, right now. But
you were serious about K.D. Cannon, Joel.
Absolutely. I mean, who could not be? Because there's nothing we love around here, and I know everyone across football loves it when people show up with just great names that just seem to fit well in football. And I can just imagine the headlines now from Rob Vanstone should Cannon have a big moment and win them a game, or he was shot out of a cannon as he broke through the offensive line for the touchdown. If you were a running back or something, like it would just be outstanding. So, K.D. Cannon, just know that we here at the Greencast have your back, and we hope that you become a successful CFL player because, well, we love your name.
We love your name, and I can't wait for the Vanstone-isms. I mean, just like, you're right, you brought it up, Joel. I'm just dreaming of a world in which K.D. Cannon is an all-star receiver for the Riders. And everything that Rob Vanstone would do. And even on the broadcast, I could see Rod Peterson having so much fun with it. And then Rod Black completely killing it by the fact he'd go completely over the top on it and it'd be entered in the Rod Black drinking game.
Yeah, and some year I'm actually going to do enough the work and have fun with it. We're at the start of a CFL training camp. I'm going to go through the team roster by roster and find like all the names you should be rooting for in training camp this year. It's an idea.
I like it.
It's an idea I've pitched before, I think, to Haji because I wanted him to do it, but he's obviously busy with other things. So I think next year, heading to training camp, I'm going to do the work and I'm going to put that piece together to find out all the best names that are new to the CFL you should be cheering for this year just because they have a wicked awesome name.
I like it. It'll be like the Bizarro version of when the guys at the Piffles podcast did the Hottie Bowl for a while. Mm-hmm. Can we call it the Namey Bowl?
I think it's just a who's who of who the people you should be cheering for at training camp this year in the CFL.
This is who you should be rooting for. If you have no rooting interest, these are the best names in the CFL.
And so it's another big week for here in Riderville as a new batch of local Saskatchewan beer is going to be making its way to Mosaic Stadium for the game between the Riders and the Redblacks on Saturday evening. As you may know, 6 breweries across the province are going to be shipping their local beer to every home game for the rest of the season. And so it was 3 last time. It was Rebellion, it was Churchill, and it was Prairie Sun. This week it'll be Pile of Bones Brewing, of course, our official title sponsor.
Absolutely. Slow clap for them.
Yeah, it will be Blackbridge Brewery out of Swift Current and District, who are also in the Warehouse District of Regina. And I can tell you for sure, I know that Glenn and the gang at Pile of Bones, they will be sending the crowd pleaser, the favorite The White IPA will be available in cans at Mosaic Stadium. So amazing, fresh, local beer. Once again, available at Rider games this week. I saw through social channels that Blackbridge, they're sending their Wheat Burst, which is kind of along the lines of the White IPA, but a little hoppier. So if that's what you're into, that's good. I haven't seen anywhere what district is sending just yet. So I'm not going to make any grand proclamations about their bringing, but once again this week, get out there, vote with your wallets, because here at the Greencast we are supporters of local Saskatchewan beer, and there is fresh, amazing local Saskatchewan beer once again at the stadium this week. Let's get all those suckers sold out by halftime again.
I am so sad, Joel, that the one game I was at did not feature any local beer, because when it comes to local beer, especially the lineup that we've had the past few weeks, and if you're not into trying new beers, sometimes you might walk in and see the local shelf at whatever local liquor store you're going to, and you might go, oh, I'm so intimidated. But I can tell you, when you're at a Rider game, getting to try some of these local beers, these local breweries that are bringing their best product, it's all, grown locally, and it's just like it comes from the earth of Saskatchewan, and you can put one of those in your face hole while you're watching Saskatchewan steam. It's hard to beat. I can tell you that I've tried many beers from District, many beers from Pile of Bones, many beers from Blackbridge, and man, I'm a bit of a beer connoisseur. That was one thing I did whenever I was on the road with the Saskatoon Hilltops, Saskatchewan Rush. Even when I was in the States, it was all local, and it just seems like local beer, pairs so well with the Riders. It's just, again, as I tweeted out, I think it was in response to, was it Rebellion on Twitter about selling out? I said, you know what? Maybe people just want good beer and not pill when they watch their local football team.
Absolutely.
Local beer, local football team, it just makes sense.
Absolutely. So if you're looking to find the delicious local fresh beer at Mosaic Stadium at the Rider game on Saturday night, you can find it. I believe it's called the Section 28 Bar. It's in the southwest corner. Molson stores all their fake craft beer there. So they have put in the local craft beer in there as well. So that's where you can find it, amongst some of the other stuff that claims to be craft when it isn't. So don't be confused.
That was some of the best shade I think you've ever thrown in this podcast, Joel.
Well, it's if you people who know me and people know me, when you get around into beer conversations, that's a word that generally falls out of my mouth when talking about some of the brands that the big brands try to pass off as craft. So
no, and it's true. There's been many times I've actually texted you as peel back the curtain a little bit here. You and I text constantly about sports and about beer, and once in a while I'll be like, hey, Joel, this is what I'm drinking. You'll be like, no, it's owned by Molson. They are the worst. They actually steal candy from babies.
Okay, let's not go that far.
Okay. So I should delete that text where you accuse Molson of stealing candy from babies.
I've never said that.
I know you haven't. That's fake news. Hashtag fake news.
So since we're talking about beer, we might as well segue into our little segment we do every week. John, what's in the glass this week?
Well, this week was a fun adventure. I took a little weekend getaway with my wife Lacey down to Moose Jaw, left our son Max with mother and father-in-law. So I started off the weekend beer tour with, of course, Pile of Bones' White IPA. I had that at one of the many great local... You know what? For a quick little getaway, kind of from anywhere in Saskatchewan, Moose Jaw is a great place to go. Lots of bars, lots of local beer. But as of right now, I had bought myself several of the Blackbridge Uno IPAs because I had heard rave reviews from you, another friend of mine, Nathan. He had said, listen, this is the best IPA you're going to put in your face. They had it cold at the historic downtown liquor store in Moose Jaw. Good. And I pulled it out and I put it in my face. And holy crap, damn it. Oh boy, it is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Uno describes where it ranks between 1 to 10, 1 being good, 10 being bad. We're flipping the scales a little bit, but 1 outstanding. Now, John, you were in Moose Jaw on the weekend, as you said, and there seems to be some questions about your family lineage based on your trip to Moose Jaw from what I saw.
Yes, there had been a long-standing rumor. This dates back on my mom's side of the family. Basically, my great-grandma does not know who her biological father was, and my great-great-grandma always claimed it was Al Capone. And the reason she claimed this is, well, she ran a brothel and knew she did the deed with Mr. Capone and also several of his top henchmen. But let's not talk about my grandma's great-great-grandma's past. So if anybody looks at me and tries to say that your great-great-grandma was a whore as an insult, well, it's kind of technically true, and we know this. So anyways, Lacey and I do the Tunnels of Moose Jaw tour. One of them's just the Chicago connection about the old Prohibition days, hiding out in the tunnels, and the old fronts they used to do there. Al Capone used to frequent Moose Jaw. And so there's a fairly large photo of Al Capone. And I walk up beside said photo, take my glasses off, and say to Lacey, take a comparison shot here. And let's see. There's Al Capone has very large eyebrows and sunken eyes, cheek lines when he smiles. And the most hilarious part was I said to Lacey, I said, my nose is kind of similar. And she goes, not really. You have your mom's nose. Oh, crap. My mom's side of the family, where it comes from. So I posted it on Twitter, the comparison of me and Al Capone. And I think it's safe to say that my great-great-grandmother wasn't crazy. She knew that Al Capone slipped one past the goalie. So from now on, he is great-great-grandpa Al.
I mean, if you have the opportunity to make that claim, you might as well. I mean, I admit I went and looked back at the paperwork that you filled out for the car you sold me just to make sure everything was on the up and up after learning about your mob ties. So, yeah,
You know what? And I'll tweet it back out. We're recording this on a Tuesday night. Our last Tuesday night recording session of the year. We're going to move it to Wednesdays because of curling here right away. But I'll tweet it out again Wednesday morning. And I showed a bunch of people at work and at my real job at Oakwood Nissan. One of the lot attendants, Eddie, the senior lot attendant, Eddie comes by. He says, your new nickname is Capone. However, the best part is, for the first time in my life, people are treating me with a little bit of respect.
That'll last probably a week. Maybe?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe, yeah, about that.
Then they'll remember I'm a complete ass clown and go back and treat me like I normally am.
Absolutely. And so, following up that great story for me, it's weird. The seasons are changing. It's definitely cooler, and I notice my beer taste is changing a little bit with it, too. I still love those summer beers, and I'll still buy some of them throughout the winter and drink them to think of better times. But right now, I'm really in a place with a Pile of Bones Red Ale.
Ooh, good. It's a good one.
It is so good. Like it's. I don't drink a lot over the summer, but right now it's just that perfect. Like it's not so cold that you want a porter, but it's not so warm that you want something light and citrusy. It's just that perfect balance. And they add a little bit more hops to it to make it give it a little bit of a bite, but it's still super balanced. So that's kind of what I love about it. And I've been drinking a lot of that one lately.
And it's so hard to do a good red.
Yeah, and the cool story about this one is this is a beer that I believe Glenn has been brewing as a home brewer before he even started. Like, this is his, like, almost his original recipe. It's probably been tweaked a little bit over the years, but this is a beer that he's been brewing forever, and it's in the can, and it's just outstanding.
I look forward to having more of it in my face hole.
Absolutely. So, a big week for the Riders, as always, as, they surprisingly, at least in my books, picked up the sweep over the Bombers between the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into the Banjo Bowl in a little bit because that game was just too weird to not talk about, even though there's stories out of that game that are maybe more important than the game itself at this point. And the biggest issue, but the biggest storyline that came out of that game was the status of quarterback Zach Collaros, as he took that big hit from Jeff Hecht there in the second half and didn't return to the game, but did return to the sidelines, which at the time I kind of took as probably a good sign, because I think he came back to the sidelines with about 3 minutes left in the game or so, and at that point, there wasn't any point in putting him back in the game unless they were down by like 3 and needed to get up the field, but considering they were in the lead and it was going to be up to the defense to win the game regardless, there was no point in throwing Zach Collaros back into that game, no matter how good he may or may not have been feeling. So the question has been, is he going to play? What's going to happen? Well, our boy Justin Dunk broke the news on Monday that he went through concussion protocol. All is good. Chris Jones said today, barring some kind of setback, he is going to play on Saturday against Ottawa. And that big gust of wind you felt through the province today was just a big old sigh of relief, because from what we saw in that game and what we've seen all season long, it's clear that while this defense is what's going to win or lose them games, they are still an entirely different team on offense when Zach Collaros is not in the game compared to Brandon Bridge, because I think it's clear, rightly or wrongly, that Stephen McAdoo just does not trust any other quarterback to run the offense the way he does.
No, and you're absolutely correct. And it was actually you that brought up that point in your quick recap there for 3 Down Nation. Mm-hmm. You look at the similar situation, the Riders an obvious field goal, maybe obvious run attempt there later in the football game. Last week in the Labor Day Classic, they go ahead, they air it out, they seal the game, boom, done. This week with Brandon Bridge in there, it is hand it off, take your 1.5 yards that you gain from the running back falling over behind the line. You're right, that shot is not taken there without Zach Collaros in the game. You could even tell it's just like the wind was taken out of the team a little bit when Brandon Bridge stepped in. And I'm a guy coming into the season, I thought there was a ton of potential for Brandon Bridge. I thought that he was going to battle for the starter's job, and that just has not been the case for him. So It's absolutely massive that Zach Collaros is coming back. And I know you and I were maybe going to discuss this a little bit later, but Zach Collaros and his history of maybe hiding injuries. But from a guy that's had several concussions, speaking as myself, I can tell you, if you are genuinely concussed, genuinely not feeling well, the last place you want to be is loud and bright.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is a good sign that Collaros came back out of the room, even just to stand on the sidelines, because if he was really badly concussed, like I have been multiple times, and I can speak from experience, the absolute last thing you want to do is be on the sidelines in a close Banjo Bowl in the middle of daylight. You kind of want to hide in the dark and not talk or think about anything.
Yeah, I think that's an entirely fair point, but there is still that you still have to take a step back, because this is a guy who has admitted that he's hid injuries from the training staff before. Now, he says he's learned from that, and I'm willing to take him at face value for that and say, okay, yeah, he has learned from that, and we'll probably know pretty quickly in the game on Saturday night if he has learned from that and if he is hiding anything or not, but I'm willing to believe that I'll take him at his word. I'll believe him that he learned his lesson, and he's fine. And the fact that he didn't come back in that football game, that he didn't really seem to be all, hey, he wasn't in Chris Jones's ear, like constantly trying to get back into that game. It was just, he was there. So
right.
I think to me that says he learned his lesson. He didn't hide anything. He decided he's going to sit out the rest of that game because there wasn't much time left, and they move on. So he's going to play this week, and this is the night and day difference you see with the offense. And we've talked a lot about the offense of this team, and there's still a ton of question marks there about whether they can actually win them a football game. We don't need to get into that again for the 10 millionth time. But what I am starting to see from this offense overall is their ability to contribute in ways that maybe a lot of people don't think of, because, okay, yeah, they generally don't put the points on the board, and yeah, okay, they're getting like 14 points a game from defense and special teams, and generally that's unsustainable, but for some reason that cliff still hasn't fallen off.
Yeah.
And even though they get beat statistically on offense pretty much every week, the one interesting stat, if you go back and look at the game stats after every game, pretty much all the box scores, miraculously, because of the way they operate the offense, they're not really hurting their defense that much. Like, the defense doesn't really have to play that many more plays, because generally speaking, even though they score maybe at most 1 touchdown a game, the time of possession is still generally even every game. And when an offense is that bad, when they don't score that many points, usually they're getting beat pretty bad in time of possession, and that wears down the defense. But this offense is at least allowing them the time to rest up properly to make sure that they can keep doing their jobs. So from that regard, the offense is contributing, and while they can still be better, they're playing a key role in making sure that the bread and butter of this team is good to go.
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to that last week too as well, saying that obviously this offense is good. They're not great, but they're good because they're able to drive the ball down. They're just settling for 3 a lot. And to me, that just comes down to finding a guy or two that could step up. One guy for me in the Banjo Bowl was Trey Mason. It looks like he's going to take that starting running back job and run with it. Jordan Williams-Lambert is looking like a really good second option behind Naaman Roosevelt. I still think I would like to see one more receiver step up. Yeah. I think going from the receiving depth they had last year and how well that suited the team to what they have this year, that it's basically Roosevelt and Williams-Lambert. I would like to see one guy emerge, take a step forward, have a big game, something like that, get worked in a little bit before I really put my full trust in this. But I think once that point happens, and as Zach Collaros continues to get more comfortable with the aforementioned Mr. Roosevelt, Williams-Lambert, Trey Mason, I do see them, going from being a ball control offense to being able to actually put some points on the board. I mean, it's one thing to ask, a team to go from getting it consistently down the field to punching it in, rather than a team trying to figure out how to get it down the field in the first place without being picked off 5 different times, like Matt Nichols and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, and that's entirely a fair point. And I think we saw an example of that more so in the Labor Day Classic than we did the Banjo Bowl. What we see generally when it's on is an offense that is able to grind down the other defense, and that's when they take their shot late to ice the game. It's not a strategy I particularly would want to employ, but hey, if it's working, it's working, and there are many ways to crack this egg. There is no one set formula for winning championships in football, so there's many ways you can do it, so there's nothing wrong with that. And so you brought up the multiple upon multiple upon multiple interceptions that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers threw, and they could have thrown more in that Banjo Bowl because there were some that were called back on penalty as well. And I wrote it on the piece as well on 3 Down Nation that the Labor Day Classic, we all know it as the game, generally speaking, the Riders win. But the Banjo Bowl is just the game where like the weirdest stuff tends to happen. And it's fun and it's weird, and that game last week might have been the weirdest one to date because, and I think I texted you afterwards and I was like, is my take that this game probably should have ended in a tie? And
those were your exact words.
That's a thought that should never cross any columnist, any writer, any fan's mind, is saying, oh yeah, that game should have been a tie. And it's the only thing I could think of because, okay, the Bombers had, as John Hodge on the Blue Bomber Talk podcast was talking about how, numbers-wise, the Bomber offense is better except for Matt Nichols, so Matt Nichols costing the game. I'm like, okay, but a lot of that's to do with the Rider defense. So there was just so many different things that everything kind of canceled it out, and I was like, that game probably should have been a tie for how weird it was.
Yeah. It's funny. You look at that Rider defense, and they're always going to be good. They're good every single week. But I think they were gifted a few things this week by Matt Nichols trying to do too much.
Oh, that one interception particularly to Willie Jefferson, or was it the Guavin one where he like underhanded it at the goal line to nowhere? Like, that one was particularly dumb.
Like you're taught that since high school, since junior ball. Like, it's first down. You don't try to make that. You take the sack.
Yeah.
You're in field goal range. Take the sack. You have arguably the best kicker in the league to come on and get you 3 points.
It was still first down. You had another down to take a shot at the end zone even.
Even if you don't have another down, you go down, you take your 3, you get out of there. It's a close game against one of the best the best defense in the entire CFL, and I think we can say that now after watching Calgary's defense give up a whole bunch of points to Edmonton. The Willie Jefferson one, Matt Nichols makes a mistake that, if you're listening, your kid's a quarterback, don't do what Matt Nichols did and stare down your receiver the entire time. Willie Jefferson goes, I'm 8'2". I'm just going to put my hands up here and grab this ball.
That was still a hell of a play by Willie Jefferson, considering the traffic he had to go through to make that catch.
100% it was a great play. But, I mean, it starts by Matt Nichols staring down Andrew Harris from basically the snap of the ball. And the great play is it starts with also Jefferson's awareness that he doesn't have to go and get to Matt Nichols. He knows he's not, and this is what also makes this play great. He knows he's probably not getting to Matt Nichols with all the traffic he has. Mm-hmm. So he backs up, at the perfect timing before Nichols throws the ball, leaps up, makes the interception, and then the athleticism to run it down the field. You know what? If I cared more about 3-star awards and offensive and defensive player of the week, I would say it's BS that he's not a Shaw top 3 player, but
forget just Shaw top 3 player. The Riders Twitter account didn't even put him up for player of the game nominee.
Okay.
Like that one, I was texting with Ariel Zur after the game on that one, and I was like, what? How was he not up for player of the game, at least from the Riders' own Twitter account, for the way he played that one? They put Sam Hurl up after the Labor Day Classic because he had a lot of tackles. Forget that all those tackles were like 13 yards after Andrew Harris got the ball. But they can't give Willie Jefferson a nod when he played his best game of the year by far, and maybe quietly one of his best games ever as a Rider, even though he didn't really, he didn't have the sack attack he normally does, but he was everywhere.
But that's because Sam Hurl is the worst player in that defense that finally did something, so they got to give him a feather in the cap, so guys like you and I don't continually rib on him.
Even though I did, and because his tackles were basically pointless.
It's true. Great human being. Sam Hurl, great human being,
absolutely.
Below average football player.
On that note, I don't think he played a whole lot in the Banjo Bowl, did he? At least on defense.
No, I don't remember hearing his name a whole lot. Now, Rod Black was calling the game, so I had the volume down pretty low in my hotel room.
I just remember seeing a lot of Cameron Judge. So
yes, Cameron Judge. Yeah, he was impressive. Again, Willie Jefferson. It almost seemed like Jefferson had a bit of a chip on his shoulder for a good reason, because we've all been talking about Charleston Hughes.
Yeah.
And how good he's been. And it was almost like Willie Jefferson, who's been real good for the Riders.
Mm-hmm. It's
almost like he had a brief moment where he thought to himself, I'm going to remind everybody how good I am. But, and I don't mean that in a bad or a negative sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think he honestly, a little positive competition in the dressing room. That kind of stuff that you like to see. One guy's getting all the love. Charleston Hughes.
Deservedly so.
And Jefferson, absolutely deservedly so. And I think maybe that helped motivate Willie Jefferson a little bit to take his play to another level. And you can see that. A little friendly competition between teammates, to me, is always a great thing. And Jefferson has quickly said, okay, maybe Charleston's having a good year because guys got to worry about me. And if you're going to worry too much about Charleston, I'm going to make you pay.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I wrote that point on the piece as well after the game. We're coming into the year, and I put it in the big 3-down nation predictions piece where we all had to pick these different award winners and season rankings and all that kind of stuff. And I said my defensive player of the year winner was going to be Willie Jefferson because he's going to get the Charleston Hughes treatment where everyone that plays on the other side of Charleston Hughes tends to have just an absolutely gigantic year. And yes. I exactly thought that was going to happen, and you took the words out of my mouth there from my piece, basically, where it's felt like it's almost gone the opposite way, where Charleston Hughes has probably been extra good and has so many more sacks because of Willie Jefferson. And I didn't expect that to be the way this relationship kind of worked,
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's pure luxury that you can have, Hughes and Jefferson out there, and you really got to see. It was almost like the Bombers decided, okay, we're going to worry more about Charleston Hughes, and Willie Jefferson just ran all over them and obviously was inside the head of Matt Nichols the whole way. And Matt Nichols might have played the worst professional game by an established quarterback in any football league that I like. The only other comparison I can think of is Jake Delhomme throwing 6 picks in a playoff game.
Yeah.
And when we're comparing you to Jake Delhomme,
Mark Sanchez has got to have 1 or 2 in there as well.
Oh, I don't think Mr. Butt Fumble ever had a game that was that ugly.
I don't know. We'd have to go back and look, I guess. But
we need a Football Reference.
I guess it depends on whether you consider Mark Sanchez was ever established or not, too, I guess.
True enough. But he did bring us the butt fumble, and for that, we will always remember him.
Absolutely. And Matt Nichols was bad, but at the same time, the Rider defense had to be opportunistic about it, and they were. And I think when we're talking about what made the Rider defense so good that day, I think the difference compared to the Labor Day Classic we saw as well was the re-addition of Mikael Brooks. and what a difference he makes in stopping the run and just the general push and everything along the defensive line when he's in the middle there rather than someone else besides Zach Evans. And also generally using 4-man rush more than 3-man rush in general helps as well.
Is it scary to say that this defense with, and you mentioned it, hearing Cameron Judge's name a lot, seeing Cameron Judge out there a lot, is it safe to say, is it scary to say that I think they've gotten better as the season's gone on?
Oh, there's no question about it.
As Judge has emerged as a viable option as a Canadian linebacker spot, and Mikael Brooks is healthy, and Jefferson, we just talked at length about Jefferson and Hughes. Like, it's just, I mean, to me, like this defense, it's getting better, and that should be scary for the rest of the league, especially now that we're kind of heading into that. Let's face it, we got about 4 to 6 more weeks of good weather for offensive football.
Mm-hmm.
This Rider team, a grinded-out offense, and the best defense in the league, combined with some great work on special teams. Joel, between this and the fact that they now have the season series with Winnipeg, they could potentially get the season series with BC, they've beaten Calgary, they've thrown up some stinkers against teams in the East, which perplexes me. But it's just, I'm starting to get the feel. Like, for the first time this year, I'm really starting to think, okay, this is a team that looks like it can do damage in October and beyond.
Yeah.
Significant damage. I did pick them to make the Grey Cup against Hamilton. We will not mention who I said would be a quarterback for Hamilton. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better about that hot take.
Yeah, as you should be, and I have to say that I can't deny that the thought has crossed my mind as well. Now, preseason, I did pick the Riders to finish second in my yearly 6 predictions before the season piece. I said they would finish second in the West, and they have a pretty good shot at that right now. And that's really all the fans really can ask for at this point. And okay, yeah, they're on a 4-game winning streak. They are going to lose another game or two eventually. That's just the nature of the beast. But yeah, overall, this team is trending in a very, very positive direction. And what you're seeing, and you alluded to it, was, to use a stupid hockeyism here, they are built to win in the playoffs. Because that's the kind of game that they're probably going to have to play at some point. It could be the West Final in Calgary and there's a blizzard.
Yeah.
Hey, it could be the Grey Cup at Edmonton, and there could be a blizzard. It could be the West semifinal in Regina, and there could be a blizzard. And at that point, advantage Riders, even if it's in Calgary, I will say advantage Riders.
Hell, the way the season's going, could be a blizzard this Saturday against Ottawa.
I don't know about that, but if there is a blizzard on Saturday in Ottawa, we know who's going to have an interesting day is TSN, and they ruffled some feathers over the weekend because they had the triple header, which I love, and if they ever get another team in Halifax, I want a quad. You can go from coast to coast. That tweet went off a lot more than I ever thought it would for a dumb sort of off-the-top kind of thought. But anyway, and so they had the triple header, and maybe the games were a little close at times, and the Rider game did take longer because of some injuries and reviews and such. And so they decided to start the Battle of Alberta, the Labor Day rematch, on TSN 1.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved the end of the Rider game to 3, 4, and 5. And this brings me to one of the things that really annoys me and really grinds my gears, as some people like to say. It seems TSN, in this scenario, with their 1 through 5, can never win. Because they have the 5 feats, but it's important to notice that 3 through 5 are technically really regionals. They did a poor job branding that by calling them 3, 4, and 5 rather than West, Toronto, and East. If they had done that, it would have cleared up everything. Because I even had some conversations with people who were mad that it went off TSN 1. Like, well, always PVR TSN 3. The Rider game will always be there 100% of the time. So that's basically what it comes down to. And people, it seems like, okay, TSN actually uses their 5 feats to their advantage. People get mad. TSN has 4 of the same things on everything but TSN 2. People get mad because there's something they can't watch right now. And I'm just like, well, what do you want? Like, really? they used their feeds effectively in that moment, and I'm sorry that you were PVRing TSN1 or all you have is TSN1, but it's not really their problem. They can't appease everyone. They have to make a decision, and since there's technically no Alberta regional for them because they don't have any Alberta regional hockey, which is really what all of this comes down to with a 1 through 5, they made a decision that was the best they could do in that moment because Eskimos and Stamps fans then would have been mad and they would have missed probably a decent proportion of the first quarter had that game not started on TSN1.
Yeah. Well, and again, like you said, it just strikes me as simple, and maybe you and I have the luxury of being able to pay for all 5 TSNs.
Yeah.
I know whenever I recently flipped cable packages, having the ability to have all 5 TSNs to me is essential, especially being a Winnipeg Jets fan. All my Jets games are on TSN 3. Like, I don't need NHL Center Ice. I get all my Jets games on TSN 3. But just by watching the network, you figure out, okay, this is for the Prairies. This one here is for the Prairies. So just, like you said, set your PVR. I think people, and I'm assuming if you have a PVR, you probably have access to the funds required for all 5 TSNs.
Yeah, and you don't need it all year. You can call your provider and start having all the TSNs on week 1, and literally after week 21, because you don't need it in the playoffs, cancel the other 4 if you want.
Oh, certainly. I could see where people on a fixed income, people that don't have the luxury of PVRs, of the extra spending money to get all 5 TSNs, I could see the disappointment there.
Yeah.
Those people I empathize with. But
this is the nature of the world we live in today, though. Like, they're not. If the games aren't going to be on CTV for everyone to watch for free, this is just how it is.
Exactly. But I mean, there are people that can't afford the PVRs and the high def TVs and all that, and those people I empathize with.
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
people that were PVRing the game, remove your head from your buttocks and just PVR it on TSN 3.
Yeah.
Like this is like I feel like this is, you know, when like your great grandpa Al Capone sits you down on his lap, your little boy, gives you some like advice, like go out in the world, like, you know, brush your teeth, floss, don't eat too many cheeseburgers. I feel like I want to take all our listeners on my knee as a father and say, listen, when you're recording the Rider game, record it on TSN 3.
Yep. And if you want a little hack, something I've learned, because they used to, remember the TSN used to archive like all their live events on their website for you to watch? Yep. They don't really do that much anymore. And I know that, and so if you are like internet savvy, I do know that the TSN Go app on the Xbox, they archive everything there still. So I have in times I've been out and I forgot to PVR a game or whatever. I go on to the Xbox app and I can watch a game start to finish from there. Don't even need to PVR it. It's weird that it's there. I assume it would probably be there for the PlayStation app as well. Again, this is a whole money situation in terms of having these subscriptions and these game consoles and everything, but at the same time, that option is there too if you have it.
Right. And take advantage if you have it. Now, my beef with TSN, and this grinds my gears as a former professional play-by-play man. When they brought Jordan Reeves' dad into the booth to start the third quarter in a tight game in which one of the teams was driving. And I've kind of made a couple Rod Black jokes. I'll make Rod Black jokes probably till the day I die. Apparently, he's one of the best human beings in the world. He's not that good at his job. There's a lot of really good people good at their job in TSN and good at calling football that should be given opportunities. Love Rod Black. Great guy. Stick to basketball and figure skating. Really good basketball host. Really, really good during the Raptors play.
Love his work on the Raptors, yeah.
The lack of awareness shown when you have Jordan Reeves' dad and a team is driving and you're interviewing him rather than talking about the game is Bush League. Call the game. You have the game in front of you. Call the game. And let's face it, if Jordan Reeves' dad DM'd one of us asking to come on the podcast, I don't know if we take that interview. It's not like you were talking to, I get it. It's a fun interview. It's a halftime thing. It is. You let him up in the booth. You let him break down a couple plays as your color commentator. There's a way to do this. And the way to do it.
Pregame show.
Exactly. And not even if you don't want to work in the pregame show, tell Jock, or tell Dwayne, pardon me, put your feet up, grab some popcorn, throw the headset on him for a couple plays, let him break it down. When somebody's going to be punting and there's no return, you don't take your commercial break, then you ask him a couple more in-depth questions. But to, interview him.
Yeah.
And then, to be showing clips to a large Winnipeg audience of Winnipeg fans with the Winnipeg Jets losing in the playoffs to the Vegas Golden Knights. Whoever made that decision could probably sit on a carrot and wiggle. Don't even get me started, too. And again, good awareness here. This was the proper way to do it. Sarah Orlesky on the sidelines. Big fan of Sarah Orlesky's. She's interviewing Nick Ehlers, Winnipeg Jets forward. Speaking of the Jets. She quickly realizes stuff's happening. So she stops interviewing Nick Ehlers. Rod Black tries to throw back down to her for more Nick Ehlers' interview, and she basically goes, so Nick, games are good. Game's exciting. Hey, Nick Ehlers, Jet play in a week. Back to you. Veteran maneuver.
Absolutely.
Veteran maneuver right there. You had a blockhead of a play-by-play host trying to go back down to you to get the thoughts of a Danish forward in the middle of a 50-yard gain down near the goal line. And she just went, nope, we're out. Attaby, Sarah Orlesky, Rod Black, shame finger. Shame.
So this is an interesting conversation that I had with a friend of the show, Dan Plaster, because he's like us. He's a bit of a media nut, and I like to talk media with him, especially sports media. And this theory that I've kind of been building on is the luxury, because if you look at the NFL broadcasts, how much better they are. I'm not talking about production-wise here. TSN's not going to be that, and that's fine. But the talent and the stories are better because every crew that goes that is covering a game is covering that game only that week. There is no, there's no working 2 or 3 games in a week. And occasionally some of the NBC guys did it on Thursday Night Football, but regardless, there's at least a few more days in between before Sunday Night Football. But at least they still had the Sunday Night Football producers in probably both places all week leading up to that game.
Yes.
So I know TSN doesn't have the resources to have 4 different play-by-plays. I get that.
But they do.
I don't really know. There's a lot of guys. Gordon Miller doesn't want to do it. They only have so many bodies that they can throw on, especially behind the scenes, to really make this work.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right with the behind the scenes. But I mean, in terms of play-by-play, you're right. Gordon Miller wants the summers off, rightfully so. But I mean, you've got Derek Taylor, who's called games, who I thought did a fine job of calling games. I love Rod Smith's call of the games because I think Kate Burness is a great host, and she could host Thursday and Friday Night Football, allow Rod to call more games.
Yeah.
Chris Cuthbert is the best in the business.
And this is more the angle that I think I'm going to go with it, because TSN isn't ever going to put that kind of investment into it as much as we'd like to see, and especially if we get to 5 games a week. I think it would be beneficial for them if it doesn't have to be any specific time, any specific day, but they just picked out of 1 every 4 games, or this year sometimes 1 every 3 games, they pick 1 game of the week. That's the game that they decide they're going to sink their resources into. So that is Suits, CC, the best production crew guys behind the scenes. That is the game you are focusing on this week. You have like a producer at each practice throughout the week, and then Cuthbert and Suter then know that these are the only 2 teams they have to worry about that week, and you can actually develop a proper broadcast with great stories and great stats, and the whole thing is well researched and well put together, rather than kind of talking about the same old tired talking points that we see week after week and bringing in dumb interviews that we don't really care about.
No, and you're absolutely right. I mean, and it's funny because they've tried to make Friday Night Football the highlight, but they don't put the resources into it like they could. They couldn't make it like Sunday Night Football. I love Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
I love Sunday Night Football. I love Monday Night Football. Because exactly as you said it, Joel, you get the best stories.
Even the guys that do all the local broadcasts on Fox and CBS, that's the only game they're doing that week. There isn't, it's not, I can't remember the name of some of the other guys, but it's not them working that and then they work another game some other day, right? This is the games they work. Yeah. And that's what they know, and that's what they know to research, and they know that game, and they know those teams that week inside and out, and it makes such a big difference on the broadcast.
Yes. Or lean on your sideline reports a little bit more. I mean, you have the aforementioned Sarah Oleski in Winnipeg. She's in Winnipeg. She go to every single practice, and then even the practice for the other team when they arrive. You have Claire Hanna down in Regina. I know there was a great bit on Jane Dan. She's obviously at every practice. I don't know if Chris Jones knows she's there. And Farhan Lalji out in Vancouver, just the 3 sideline reporters that jump out to me. Give them the time to tell, because it seems like when they are telling these stories, it's, okay, here's your 45 seconds between plays, go.
Yeah.
Feature them at halftime. I love the panel, but hey, here's a sit down with Chris Strevler on how he's a raw rookie here in the NFL, here in the CFL. Here's the return of Rob Bagg. Here's a great sit down with Rob Bagg about what the hell he's been doing for the past 6 months, and then visiting the Italian Star Deli.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think, well, the other side of this that would be beneficial to the CFL then is especially if we stay at 4 games for a little while, or especially when they get 5, is if they could split the contract. So if you had 2 games a week on TSN, and you had 2 games a week on like Sportsnet or Global or something, then all of a sudden the resources aren't quite so spread so thin, and there's people that then they'll be pushing each other to get better too. Like ultimately, that's where they really should be going. They'll probably be getting more money by doing that way too, but TSN essentially owns the CFL at this point, and that's probably the route they're going to stick. I don't know.
Yeah. Why fix what ain't broken when you got the monopoly, right? It's just like how the WWE, shout out Josh Smith, has gotten so much worse since WCW 4.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your sites will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.